Hey, my name is Kent, and it's a hot mic, and I'm a grateful believer in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and I'm a believer who struggles with addictions to drugs and alcohol. I wanted to read as a group from Psalm 139, and if you guys want to read along with me, that would be nice. For you created in my ownless being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that fully well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. I love that. Like Jen was saying, the mystery in her song. What a mystery. It's starting to be revealed, though, I think, in all of our lives. I'm going to read through this fast because this is too long, and I've got a lot to cover, so I hope you bear with me. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, 1948. To a newly married mom and dad, lived there 1 year and a half, and then moved to Frankfort, Kentucky for the next couple of years. My mother had just graduated from nursing school in Chicago. She had met my father on a train while he was on leave from the Navy, where he would serve on the USS Yorktown. My mom and dad were married on her parents' farm outside of Cooperstown, North Dakota. And back in Chicago, she worked as an RN while Dad started a small cabinet shop. After the move to Frankfort, Dad would start another shop and also build a few homes. Mom continued in nursing. Many of Dad's family lived around Frankfort, and I was spoiled by my uncles and aunts, my grandma, and my grandpa. A great story, giving an insight into my nature and God's need to protect me on many future occasions, was when my uncle, who was babysitting me, fell asleep. He woke up to find that I'd pulled a chair over to the fuse box. And now I don't know how old I was, but it was, I was maybe 2.5, 3 years old or something, And I proceeded to unscrew about half the fuses out of the fuse box and set them neatly in a row. He freaked out. Yeah, no kidding. We moved again, the big move across country from Kentucky up to North Dakota which was a very emotional move, leaving behind my dad's family, which we'd then only occasionally see afterwards. Arriving at Mom's parents' North Dakota farm, which is about a 15-minute drive outside of Cooperstown, population about 2,000, give or take. There was an eager anticipation of partnering with Grandpa in a successful farming business. He had homesteaded. He was actually one of the Norwegian guys that had homesteaded there. His grandfather actually had, and lived in like sod homes and stuff. But that's another story. It became almost immediately apparent that Grandpa and Dad were not compatible. The partnership didn't work. Disappointed, we moved a short distance away and rented a little farm home, and my dad found work building a home close by. Later, he'd begin his business about 150 miles away in Mandan, North Dakota. My sister is born in Cooperstown when I was about 5 years old. Eventually, we moved to an apartment in Mandan, where my dad's home building cabinet shop business started to take off in the late 1950s, or in the 1950s. While living at the apartment, I demonstrate again my questionable judgment and overactive imagination. I was rescued by a neighbor lady one fine day while I was reenacting being hung. I went out to, they had clotheslines back then, and I had fastened something up, and I was hanging myself because I'd seen that in a cowboy movie or something. I wanted to check that out. Once again, God intervened and sent this neighbor lady out. One summer evening, Dad and I went to a rodeo there. While I was walking in, I saw two Mandan cops hauling out an Indian man who they had hit on over his head, billy clubbed, and it had caused blood to run under. I didn't like that. It bothered me for a long time. Obviously, it still bothers me. Back then in the 50s, some Indians would live on the outskirts of town in little temporary homes that they'd make from cardboard or whatever else they could come up with. I saw this when I was out in drives with my parents. It was really troubling to me. I was learning that something was desperately wrong in this world. Happiness needed to be left behind as we moved forward in our lives. Relatives couldn't get along, causing pain and resentments. People had no real concern for each other. And there's a lot of suffering. Lots of pain, suffering, confusion, and the constant need to move on because something wasn't right. And it probably would be, though, someday, somewhere else. When older, I would actually find out that I was an 8th, maybe a 16th Indian. As an adult, I asked, As an adult, I asked about what tribe, but nobody seemed to know or want to talk about it. I guess not everybody thought it was as neat being part Indian as I did. I look forward to knowing about this when I'm in heaven. Paul reflects on this in 1 Corinthians 13:12 when he says, "Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." Anyway, the next move was just across the Missouri River to Bismarck, North Dakota, right after I'd finished 3rd grade. This was Mrs. Newman's 3rd grade class. She'd introduced me to what a teacher from hell was all about. Up till then, my teachers had been nurturing and encouraging. My schooling career had started with no small reluctance on my part. I was taken to kindergarten by my mom. I screamed and cried so she couldn't even leave. On the 2nd day, it was the same thing. On the 3rd day, my dad took me. And when I started to cry, he took off his watch. He showed me where the hands would be when he'd be back and told me to keep it until he came for me, and then he went to work. I guess I was okay after that, at least up until Mrs. Newman's class. I grew bored and intimidated at school, and I would slip into daydreaming during class or secretly playing in my desk with toys that I'd bring from home. Many times these were confiscated. Teachers would always say that I had the ability to do much better, but my performance through elementary, junior high, and high school was average. In junior high, I found myself in a math class populated with problem kids, mostly boys. We would terrorize this teacher till he quit halfway through the term. I did graduate from Bismarck High School in 1966 with a 2-point something, I don't remember exactly. In Bismarck when I was 10, then 12, my 2 brothers were born. My family was now complete, a mom, a dad, sister, and 2 brothers. In junior high, I started getting into trouble. Not serious, but I became rebellious. It was during this time that my dad's home building business was ruined. My dad's reputation and success that he'd worked so hard for had really started taking off. Unfortunately, he agreed to build homes for 4 new oil company management transfers to Bismarck from California. I'll bet they were excited about being transferred to North Dakota. These men were hotshots, educated and experienced in business practices, and my dad wasn't. He still thought a handshake was a man's bond. When their homes were finished, they refused to pay what they had agreed to. So Dad took them to court. These 4 plus another man whose home Dad had built, and he was in on this conspiracy. They lied about their agreements, and the judge decided against my dad. Their status, I guess, far exceeded his. I'm sure there were payoffs involved, and I had another hard lesson in how this world works. These men destroyed a business he'd spent years building, his reputation in a small community, his credit, and the healthy fabric of our family. He told me later that he'd taken his shotgun over to one of these men's home, and he sat in his car thinking of what to do. Try to force a confession and record it, or would he just shoot him? Realizing that he'd go to jail, making everything way worse than it already was, he left and came back home. But soon he'd contemplate using this gun to kill himself because he was so depressed. He would never fully rebound from that setback. It devastated him and changed him, profoundly altering the relationship he had with us kids. The results, as we've grown into adulthood, have been tragic and permanent.